Warm greetings all. I am Sangeeta and I will be briefing you the chapter 2 of Indian economy. Indian economy 1950 to 1990. Indian economy 1950 to 1990. This chapter deals with goals of 5-year plans, major policy initiatives in agriculture sector, industry and trade, foreign trade policy, import substitution. 1950 is a time period where formation of planning commission took place, and 1990 is a time period where India was open to more reforms. Liberalization, privatization and globalization (LPG) started. Our planners had to decide about the type of economic system suitable for our nation. An economic system is required to promote overall welfare of the nation, and the idea behind planning was to initiate development to raise living standards and bring in new economic opportunities. There are three types of economic system, namely market or capitalist economy, socialist economy and mixed economy. We will be learning about each of these in detail. Market or capitalist economy. Market economy is an economy where decisions regarding production, investment and distribution are guided by price signals and created by forces of demand and supply. This type of economy focuses on profit motive. Socialist economy is an economic system where decisions are taken by government, keeping in view the interest of society as whole, and the main motive is social welfare. Cuba, China are examples of socialist nation. To be noted, socialism appealed to Nehru and he emphasized that private ownership should not be dominated. Mixed economy. Mixed economy is a combination of market economy and socialist economy, where decisions are taken by central authority and rest is left to free play of market forces. India is following system of mixed economy. Our next topic is plan. What is a plan? Till now, we have discussed on production and distribution goals regarding what to produce, how to produce, and by whom it will be produced. Next, our topic is planning. Plan spells out how resources of nation should be utilized. Plans should be clearly specified. Plans are of two types. Plans to accomplish short-term goals and of 5-year duration are called 5-year plans, and plans to accomplish long-term goals and of 20-year duration is called 20-year plans or perspective plan. India has successfully completed its 12 5-year plans. Duration of first plan was from 1951 to 1956. Concept of 5-year plans was developed executed by Planning Commission. Indian Planning Commission was established in 1950 to evaluate physical, financial and human resources. Planning Commission was dissolved in 2015 and replaced by Niti Aayog, a policy think tank of Government of India established to achieve sustainable development goals with corporate federalism and is an acronym for National Institute for Transforming India. Formulation of Planning Commission was further strengthened by P.C. Mahalanobis, architect of Indian planning. His growth model for India was India should build a strong industrial base, a fundamental base for other industries. National Development Council. It is an apex body to planning constituted in 1952. No plan was implemented without the approval of NDC, National Development Council. Goals or objectives of planning. The major objectives of planning are growth, modernization, self-reliance, and equity. Growth refers to increase in country's capacity to produce output of goods and services in the country. It refers to sustainable increase in country's real GDP. Growth implies a larger stock of productive capital and larger size of supporting services. Increase in efficiency of productive capital and services. GDP is a good indicator of economic growth. GDP of country is derived from agriculture, industrial and service sector. The contribution made by each of these sectors is known as sectoral or structural composition. Modernization, adoption of new technology in production of goods and services to increase the output is called modernization. It also includes social outlooks such as social recognition of women, that women should also have equal rights as men. Self reliance. Self reliance means avoiding imports of those goods which have the capability of being produced in own country. The first 7 5-year plans focused on self reliance. This policy focused on reducing dependence on foreign countries, especially for food, and dependence on imported goods make India's sovereignty vulnerable to foreign interference in our policies. So, to avoid this, self reliance was implemented. Equity. Equity means to ensure that benefits reach all the sections of society instead of being enjoyed by only rich. It highlights on the fact that inequalities in distribution of wealth should be reduced and every Indian should be able to meet his or her basic needs, that is food, house, education, healthcare, etc. Points to remember. Planning Commission was set up in 1950 with Prime Minister as its chairperson. India opted for economic goals to fulfill and achieve common goals of equity, modernization, self-reliance and growth. Planning Commission was dissolved in 17th August 2014 and replaced by Niti Aayog, National Institute for Transforming India. Major policy initiatives in agriculture sector. The problems prevalent in agriculture sector was lack of permanent means of irrigation, deficiency of finance, small and scattered holdings, and lack of organized market system. To eradicate these problems, the various reforms were implemented. Land reforms refer to change in ownership of land holdings, that is, abolition of intermediates and fixed maximum size of land for individuals. What is the need for land reform? At the time of independence, the land tenure system was characterized by intermediaries who merely collected rent from the actual tillers of the soil without contributing towards improvements on the farm. The low productivity of the agriculture sector forced India to import food from USA. Equity in agriculture sector called for land reforms. The types of land reforms implemented in the agriculture are as follows. Abolition of intermediaries, the ownership of land holdings, land ceiling, and incentives. Abolition of intermediaries. The abolition of intermediaries meant that some 200 lakh tenants came into direct contact with the government. They were thus freed from being exploited by the zamindars. The ownership of land holdings. The policy of land to tiller is based on the idea that the cultivators will take more interest, that is, they will have more incentive in increasing output if they are the owners of the land. This is because ownership of land enables the tiller to make profit from the increased output. Tenants do not have the incentives to make improvements on land since it is the landowner who benefit more from higher output. Land ceiling. Land ceiling was another policy to promote equity in agriculture sector. Land ceiling means fixing maximum size of land which could be owned by an individual. The purpose of land ceiling was to reduce the concentration of land ownership in few hands. Drawbacks of land reforms. These include the goal of equity was not fully served by abolition of intermediaries and policy of land to tiller. In some areas, the former zamindars continued to own large areas of land by making use of some loopholes in the legislation. There were cases where tenants were evicted and the landowners claimed to be self cultivators, claiming ownership of land. Even when the tillers got ownership of land, the poorest of agricultural laborers, such as sharecroppers and landless laborers, did not benefit from land reforms. Land reforms were successful in Kerala and West Bengal because these states' government were committed to the policy of land to the tiller. Green Revolution refers to increase in production of food grains resulting from use of HYV seeds, high yield variety seeds for cultivation of wheat and rice especially. Why was Green Revolution implemented? It was implemented because 75% of population was dependent on agriculture and productivity was too low due to old technology and absence of required infrastructure. To combat these problems, Green Revolution was implemented. Benefits of Green Revolution. First is increase in marketed surplus. A good proportion of rice and wheat produced during the Green Revolution period was sold by farmers in the market. As a result, income of the farmers increased. Decrease in price of food grains. The price of food grains declined relative to other items of consumption. The low income groups who spend a large percentage of their income on food benefited from this decline in relative prices. Buffer stock. The spread of Green Revolution technology enabled the government to procure sufficient amount of food grains to build buffer stock which could be used in times of food shortage. Self-reliance. Indian agricultural productivity increased sufficiently to enable the country to be self-sufficient in food grains. We no longer had to be at the mercy of America or any other nation for meeting our nation's food requirements. Critical evaluation of Green Revolution. The farmers who could benefit from HYV seeds required reliable irrigation facilities as well as financial resources to purchase fertilizer and pesticide, which small farmers could not afford. Thus, Green Revolution increased the inequalities between small and big farmers, since only the big farmers who could afford the required inputs reaped the benefits of Green Revolution. In the first phase of Green Revolution, the use of HYV seeds were restricted to more affluent states such as Punjab, Andhra Pradesh and Tamil Nadu. Further, the use of HYV seeds primarily benefited the wheat growing regions only. However, in the second phase of Green Revolution, the HYV technology spread to a larger number of states and benefited more variety of crops. The HYV crops were also more prone to attack by pests, and the small farmers who adopted this technology could lose everything in a pest attack. Role of government in ensuring that the Green Revolution benefited small farmers as well. The government provided loans at a low interest rate to small farmers. The government also provided subsidized fertilizers so that small farmers could also have access to the needed inputs. The risk of the small farmers being ruined when pests attacked their crops was considerably reduced by the services rendered by research institutes established by the government. Thus, the Green Revolution would have favored the rich farmers only if the government did not play an extensive role in ensuring that the small farmers also gain from the new technology. Trends in occupational structure of the Indian economy during 1950 to 1990. Economists have found that as a nation becomes more prosperous, the proportion of GDP contributed by agriculture as well as proportion of population working in the agriculture sector declines considerably. However, in India between 1950 to 51 and 1990 to 91, the proportion of GDP contributed by agriculture declined significantly, but not the population depending on it, as shown in the pie charts. Despite the implementation of Green Revolution, more than 65% of the country's population continued to be employed in the agriculture sector till 1990 to 1991. The reason is that the industrial sector and the service sector did not absorb the people working in the agriculture sector. Many economists call this an important failure of our policies followed during 1950 to 1990. Subsidies. Subsidies are cash grants provided by government to producers to encourage them to produce a crop and to sell goods at a price lower than the free play of market forces. Debate over subsidies. Arguments against subsidy. Once the technology is found profitable and is widely adopted, subsidies should be eliminated since their purpose has been served. Subsidies are meant to benefit the farmers, but a substantial amount of fertilizer subsidy also benefits the fertilizer industry. Among farmers, the subsidy largely benefits the farmers in the more prosperous region, so there is no case for continuing with fertilizer subsidies. It does not benefit the target group. It is a huge burden on government's finances. Arguments in favor of subsidy. Any new technology is considered as being risky by farmers. Subsidies were therefore needed to encourage farmers to test the new technology. The government should continue with agricultural subsidies because farming in India continues to be a risky business as it widely depends on the monsoon. Most farmers are very poor and they will not be able to afford the required inputs without subsidy. Eliminating subsidies will increase the inequality between rich and poor farmers and which will violate the goal of equity. If subsidies are largely benefiting the fertilizer industry and big farmers, the correct policy is not to abolish subsidies, but to take steps to ensure that only the poor farmers enjoy the benefits. Fire plants place a lot of emphasis on industrial development. At the time of independence, the variety of industries was very narrow, largely confined to cotton, textiles, and jute. There were two well managed iron and steel firms, one in Jamshedpur and the other in Kolkata, but obviously we needed to expand the industrial base with a variety of industries if the economy was to grow. The fire plants place a lot of emphasis on industrial development because of the following. Poor nations can progress only if there is a good industrial sector. Industry provides employment than in agriculture sector. It promotes modernization and overall prosperity. Public sector was given a leading role in Indian industrial development. At the time of independence, Indian industries didn't have capital to undertake investment in industrial ventures required. The market wasn't big enough to encourage industrialists. Policy of state controlling commanding heights of the economy. This meant that the government would have complete control of those industries that were vital for the economy. Public sector was given a leading role in Indian industrial development. At the time of independence, Indian industries didn't have capital to undertake investment in industrial ventures required. The market wasn't big enough to encourage industrialists. Policy of state controlling commanding heights of the economy. This meant that the government would have complete control of those industries that were vital for the economy. Question session. Why and how was private sector regulated under the IPR 1956? Although there was a category of industries left to the private sector was kept under state control through a system of licenses. No new industries was allowed unless a license was obtained from the government. This policy was used for promoting industry in backward regions. It was easier to obtain license if industry was set in economically backward region. Even a existing industry had to obtain license for diversification of industries, that is to expand its output. Promotion of small scale industries by government. In 1955, the Village and Small Scale Industries Committee, also known as the Carvey Committee, noted the possibility of using small scale industries for promoting rural development. A small scale industry is defined with reference to the maximum investment allowed on the assets of a unit. This limit has changed over a period of time. In 1950, a small scale industrial unit was one which invested a maximum of 35 lakh, while at the present the maximum investment allowed is 1 crore. Foreign trade policy, import substitution. In the first 7 plans, foreign trade was characterized by what is commonly called an inward-looking trade strategy. Technically, this strategy is called import substitution, which aimed at replacing or substituting imports with domestic production. For example, instead of importing vehicles made in a foreign country, industries would be encouraged to produce them in India itself. Reason for protection from foreign competition. The policy of protection is based on the notion that industries of developing countries are not in a position to compete against the goods produced by more developed economies. It is assumed that if the domestic industries are protected, they will learn to compete in the course of time. Our planners also fear the possibility of foreign exchange being spent on import of luxury goods if no restrictions were placed on imports. Protection from imports took two forms. They are tariffs and quotas. Tariffs are tax on imported goods. They make imported goods more expensive and discourages their use. Quotas specify the quantity of goods which can be imported. The effect of tariffs and quotas is that they restrict imports and therefore protect the domestic firms from foreign competition. Critical evaluation of industrial and trade policies. Positive effects. Diversification of industrial sector. No longer was Indian industry restricted largely to cotton, textiles and jute. In fact, the industrial sector became well diversified by 1990, largely due to the public sector. Promotion of small scale industries. The promotion of small scale industries gave opportunities to those people who did not have the capital to start large firms to get into business. Development of indigenous industries. Protection from foreign competition enabled the development of indigenous industries in the areas of electronics and automobile sectors, which otherwise could not have been developed. Drawbacks or criticism. Inefficient functioning of public sector. One of the major drawbacks in the industrial sector was the inefficient functioning of the public sector. Many public sector firms incurred huge losses but continue to function because it is difficult to close a government undertaking, even if it is a drain on the nation's limited resource. Excessive regulation of industries. The excessive regulation of permit license Raj prevented certain firms from becoming more efficient. More time was spent by industrialists in trying to obtain a license or lobby with the concerned ministers rather than on thinking about how to improve their products. Moreover, the need to obtain a license to start an industry was misused by industrial houses. A big industrialist would get a license not for starting a new firm, but to prevent competitors from starting new firms. No incentive for producers to improve the quality of products in the absence of foreign competition. Due to restriction on imports, the Indian consumers had to purchase whatever the Indian producers produced. The producers were aware that they had a captive market, so they had no incentive to improve the quality of their goods. Competition from imports forces our producers to be more efficient. However, some economists hold that we should protect our producers from foreign competition as long as the rich nations continue to do so. Owing to all these conflicts, economists called for a change in our policy. This, along with other problems, led the government to introduce a new economic policy in 1991. One mark questions. It's a conscious design to shape the socio-economic processes in order to achieve an objective. Economic planning. In India, what type of economic system is being followed? Mixed economy. Which is a primary objective of economic planning in India? Growth with social justice. External factors responsible for industrial sickness. Government policies related with production, distribution and prices. Conclusion. The progress of Indian economy during the first 7 plans was impressive indeed. Our industries became far more diversified compared to the situation at independence. India became self-sufficient in food production due to green revolution and land reforms resulted in abolition of zamindari system. However, many economists became dissatisfied with the performance of many public sector enterprises. Excessive government regulation prevented growth of entrepreneurship. In the name of self-reliance, our producers were protected against foreign competition, and this did not give them the incentive to improve the quality of goods that they produced. Our policies were inward oriented, and so we failed to develop a strong export sector. No serious thought was given to promote exports until the mid 1980s. The need for reform of economic policy was widely felt in the context of changing global economic scenario, and the new economic policy was initiated in 1991 to make our economy more efficient. Sequence of events: 1950, Planning Commission was set up in India with Prime Minister as its chairperson. 1955, Village and Small Scale Industries Committee, also known as Carvey Committee, was constituted for development of small scale industries. 1956, IPR was adopted in accordance with the goal of the state controlling the commanding heights of the economy. Thank you.